Hello and welcome, as this is the completion of the 13th day of December 2019. My name is Derek and welcome to the Money Charts channel, where like always all bets, trades, and of the like within each his own risk and their own reward. For myself, risk-reward management is always job number one. And the Bitcoin price against the US dollar remains within this correctionary phase as it entered it from the last low in late November, doing so on November the 27th. And that's over 2 weeks now within such. And now, even to put more icing on the cake, or less icing depending on how you want to look at it, we haven't really seen much volatility the last few days in here, as price still remains at the 18 average of lows, at the area of previous support in here, and still holding in that area. Pretty boring. On the single hour term, it's been staying in an uptrend since the December 12th morning. And that's about now 48 hours, as it's now entering the 14th day. It's 11:45 p.m. Eastern Time, including the 13th day as I'm doing this. But holding amongst this uptrend, keeping this intact, having this breakout attempt, which is relatively successful because of it succeeding this correctionary phase. And then getting it above here, just one little small high, but so far, so good. And this little run, but again, it's doing this on the lower end of the volatility. The highest end here at around 7,300, and support established at around 72. So we're not even looking at 2%. As far as Bitcoin dominance is concerned, and it's not really doing anything either. So let's move on to some altcoins, and we'll first talk about Theta, which so far so good. And at least showing that this breakout attempt that occurred on December the 8th, not that of a failed one, as that's pretty much what all of these have been. This was a failure. This one was a failure. This one was a small one. Most certainly this one in here, this entire move ended up being a failed one. And then you get the two different ways of how they could occur in big moves. This one in here, like one day. This in just a few hours it happened on. And this is where the price action went from like, well, in the low, pretty much where we are now, up to 36. And then in here, it did so right around the middle of January, up to up to March. So it took a couple of months, and it went a little higher, but relatively not that much, because really, this high matched this one, and this was just like a brief period up top. But one of the things I was thinking just recently is just even a few hours before, I remember doing a video like last year talking about how, it always seems that the first half of the year, it's good for cryptos, and the latter half, not so much. In the 2017 year, that's when it got off to a very good start in March. And then as the summer months came in the autumn, it wasn't so good. At least in the altcoin scape. Now, what was interesting is that the gains that occurred in 2017 at the end, started 2018, was just that, the start of 2018, when the altcoins pretty much topped that year. So it's like they got it going at the start of that year relatively aggressively. Now, 2019, of course, a lot of markets went up in the first bid. Bitcoin topping right when the summer started, and it's interesting. We'll see if this continues on. Of course, the market's going to do what it's going to do, but it would keep the trend going on, of course, if we have a decent rally coming soon. But as it stands right now for this, again, we got a few days just making these nice little higher highs and higher lows intact. Markets or time frames rather, like the 3 hour, we can see that recently this morning session at 10 o'clock on Friday morning, we hit a twice resisted hit level and have now managed to get up to it, back to this upper area, holding this. This is looking relatively well, I think, as we continue to move forward, that this should continue to at least have some more gains amongst this particular move. And now let's move on to Tezos, which is in at 2,400. And we had exitation of the 18. I talked about that back then, and it's just continued to do the thing you'd expect it to do. When it originally came on Binance, it got up to this high, and this surprised me how it starts. It didn't trade too volatile, and it took a decent amount of time until here. before it ended up getting going. It took a little bit of a failed breakdown here with price action going down below 1,000. Now it's at 24. So it's had a 3x move. And from this first one, it did not resist where previous resistance was. It established a major key level. It came close, but not quite supporting where it came from. That's a bullish situation. We can see what's happened there after the fact. Bullish in that within its correction from established resistance, it only did that, meaning it didn't come to like 1150, which is where you would have expected. If you're like, oh, I want to buy it back in here, you didn't, at least at that price, you weren't able to do such. And then when it broke that established resistance in here, it established a new one. Again, it really didn't come back down to where it came from, and look what's happened since again. Exitation of the 18, of course, in here, break of previous high in there. A little bit of consolidation, congestion amongst that area. And now, right now, this is where the new high happens to be. And where we came from is this band here. 2150 down to like 19 low. And technically speaking, I even suppose I can go down to 1780 for a deep, deep run. But realistically, barely below 2000 and barely below 2000 up to 21 low change is where we would come from. But it's a live move right now. This thing is showing no signs right now that this is ready to show any top as far as volume is concerned. We don't have any monsterly large volume. It's rising, which is totally fine. If we're looking for big volume top days, we could have 4, 5, 6 more days with increases, and then we have the volume day equivalency to where this would be. Maybe it comes up to here later on. In fact, I'm saying that because I think that would be more normal. Now taking a look at this on some other term time frames. First on the 8 hour, just the last little while, last 4 periods, this last sideways consolidation since last night. So the breakout that happened the morning before, 3 o'clock timestamp, December 12th, getting above this 2200 resistance that it had in here, so far is holding very, very well. Taking a look at this on the 3, we can see that we've had the high that came up here, that 1900 hours. There's the correctionary move down in here. An attempt to get above, but not quite, but still holding with a very nice aggressive rising 18. Still hasn't even touched the lows. It may do so a lot easier now, either that or time or price, but the benefit of the doubt for this is still very big. And if there's going to be any, okay, we need to have any correctionary moves, we can just see that just this little area here at that 22 and piercing below is a key move from where this would be, meaning whenever resistance or support is taken out, I expect a decent level. And to me, like, this isn't that decent at 2265, where this, yeah, that would make sense. And then, of course, you can see even deeper in here, this is where the 2000 handle would be more applicable as well. Now let's finish this off within Dash on multiple time frames and against multiple currencies, against the dollar and against Bitcoin. So we'll quickly go through such against the dollar, then we'll transition it against BTC. Only a $51 coin at levels not seen really since the March breakout in that 2017 time frame. It was 180 up here. Down at this low, it was 60. We got up to like 1,000. The volatility on this is like extreme, to say the least. And the pattern on this could say maybe this looks very bearish and it could be a move back to where we came from. And back to where we came from is like 10, 13 bucks in here. And when I talked about, just like I stated before, when you have a key break of this, that kind of goes in line amongst this logarithmic chart. So definitely something to keep in mind within this. I think it's going to be a good one, but if any declines occur, say Bitcoin goes to 6,000, then this might take a decent fall as well. With that being stated, when you have situations like this with the big volatility, we've had key low, key high. This we thought, I'm not going to say we thought, but this could have been the low, but it obviously on a bearish level is succeeding on this correctionary phase. Thus, if makes a new low, well, that's what the low is going to be. But after the low does come in play, there will be a time where it does get above this. The question is when and where and how much will come after it happens. Meaning, does it happen now with this general area here? Do we come down to like 13? Then it gets above the 18 highs at like 30 something. And then what kind of move after that does it get? Do we get above, if we make a low in here, do we just get up to like only here? Do we meet previous high? Does it break previous high? And then you talk about, oh, key low, key high, key low, and then the key high, of course, after a higher low, well, you'd have a higher high in a bull market. Transitioning to the weekly chart, we can still see that there is no signs yet of this thing bottoming. And in fact, if anything, it had this little bit of time in here, these several weeks where it was just doing nothing, down move, just holding in there, but really congesting, staying lower than this. This isn't really much of a move. It's kind of a match of previous low, decently piercing below. So even on this, you'd still got to think there's a decent chance it could potentially reach the 30. Let's move this on to the daily chart, and there's really nothing too much exciting here, but let's transition this to Bitcoin. And we'll start within the monthly term. And the fact that I can even start to say this in the crypto space and say monthly term would have a spot where it got above the 18 average of highs. And well, it's been below it now for quite some time. We can see in here after resisting it from these April highs back down to these previous levels, down towards this area in here. On its weekly chart, still nothing to get excited about to say that this thing is looking to go through a reversal on the daily chart. I guess all you can really say in here is that after showing a lot of weakness on the 18 average of lows from December the 7th through that of the 12th, that we had just a little holding and pausing here, but pretty interesting session as it came up towards this 18 average of highs, because it does seem as if, as it's pattern, that this shouldn't be doing this in this bearish trend. We should be breaking down on the opposite end. So one of the things I think is important in life, but definitely this being part of markets, is adjusting to the message of the market, what you see, understanding the situation, recognizing what it shows. And here, to me, I was looking, yeah, this looked to be breaking down, but why is it not doing this? So is there something to alert me that something different is coming into play? And I'm going to change this shorter term to Binance data. And in this, it kind of does bring an interesting setup. So as much as I've been dogging the possibility of this on the near term, as far as the next few weeks and months, we do see a setup in here on this particular time frame that looks relatively interesting, because as we've had this decline, this being where the low is because it hasn't been there since, we established this high, hasn't been there since yet either, but most certainly support and resistance has been heavily established and tested numerous times over. Boom, boom, even here. And what we're seeing is from this last high, we have had a very successful correctionary phase. And now we have this, I mean, it's not the greatest of volumes, but it's an increase of volume from all of this. And we've had just this session come down, test this 18 average of lows. That's the period in itself like this. How it follows through from this green period most certainly is saying, okay, this is looking like we are ready to, after having numerous tests of this, the more likely you test key support and resistance, this case resistance areas, the more likely it is you take it out. And the likelihood, if you take this out, is this isn't really going to be, maybe it will be a bit of resistance and it continues the setup, but either as it breaks this or this convincingly. I mean, this is going to be fast. That's not going to take long just to get here. And what happens when it gets here after the fact and that? I don't know. I mean, obviously in all these longer term aspects I'm showing you where it could go lower, it's got a long ways to go, not only just to get to this, but then you're talking this previous high, and then you're talking this previous high. And this previous high has only taken us back to late November, only a couple of weeks ago. But it does seem maybe it might be ready to do something. That's why I brought this one up, because there's nothing too exciting, but it's got the possibility of having a great move over this weekend. Thank you for tuning in and have yourself a great day. Bye-bye.